Thank you very much, Mr. Hassan Shoukry, for having us this evening. So my first question to you, Mr. Foreign Minister, is that Egypt has been expressing concern about how your neighboring country, Ethiopia, has been damming the Nile, which you said is affecting your people. What is Egypt's major concern about this Nile dam?
Well, Egypt is a country with 96% of its territory desert. Civilization initiated in Egypt in the valley of the Nile. Currently, 105 people depend on the Nile for 98% of their water, and agriculture is totally dependent on the Nile. It represents people's livelihoods. We have always been supportive of cooperation in utilizing the Nile for developmental objectives. We are currently helping our Tanzanian brothers in building their dam, power generating dam. We have had projects in South Sudan, in Uganda, in other riparian states to help them in utilizing the dam for economic purposes. And we don't have any problem that Ethiopia also takes advantage of this resource, but within the context of the rules and regulations of international law that govern transboundary water. They cannot project, as they do, that it is a matter of sovereignty. There is no sovereignty of one nation over a resource that is transboundary, especially that there are principles endorsed by the United Nations, rules of international law, and the negotiations have been going on for 10 years now, where we have not objected to the dam, have allowed for its construction while we are negotiating, and have asked only to put in place regulations that guarantee how the dam is filled and how it is operated in a manner that does not have significant harm on the downstream countries, whether Egypt and Sudan. That this has to be a predictable set of regulations, scientific, that we should adhere to, and that in no way does it infringe or restrict Ethiopia in utilizing this dam for purposes of generating electricity and providing its developmental objectives. There has been a resistance and a desire to exclusively decide on what happens in the filling and in the operation without any form of guarantee. We have offered that we import one of the commissions, the Danube River Commission, the Senegalese River Commission. There are many examples of countries that have cooperated, that have put in place regulations and rules on how best to guarantee for both and all the countries of the river to take advantage and utilize it, but at the same time in a responsible manner that guarantees the interests of especially the downstream countries. The consequences of any restriction of the water on a country of our size with our dependency would be catastrophic. Millions of people would lose their livelihoods, and the subsequent instability would be reflected on the whole region.
But are you saying Egypt is not pleased with how dialogue is ongoing to resolve these major concerns that you have enumerated this moment?
Well, it's been 10 years of negotiations on issues that can easily be resolved because these are issues of science. They are numbers. They are easily resolved if there is a political will. But if the objective is not to find an agreement and to continue to operate unilaterally without any form of regulation that guarantees, then we have to doubt the purpose of the dam and subsequent projects, whether they are for developmental purposes or are they for purposes of manipulation and projecting the national will of one country over the other.
Does that mean that this thorny issue is causing friction between Cairo and Addis Ababa?
Absolutely. Of course, it is a matter where we have expended a great time and energy, and there is no justification for not being able to reach an agreement on, again, what I mentioned is a scientific issue, and an issue if we revert to any international organization could have easily, within a matter of weeks, developed an agreement, and we offered that the World Bank should develop and structure an agreement by specialists that would fulfill the needs of both Ethiopia and both Egypt in an equitable and just manner, and we would sign it without any revision, in confidence of the impartiality of any international organization that would undertake this responsibility. When we offered this, it was refused, and I leave that for your evaluation why that should be the case.
So what do you think, from Egypt's perspective, is the best way forward to resolve this, to ease tension or friction?
To reach an agreement. An agreement is readily available. As I said, whether we do it ourselves, whether we give it to an impartial group of experts, this isn't rocket science. There are a multitude of rivers and dams on these rivers that are being operated, that are being filled and managed in a very constructive manner, which guarantees the interests of upstream and downstream countries. The only way to resolve this is through the agreement that puts in place in black and white what are the responsibilities and what are the obligations and what are the interests of all of the riparian states.
Moving to your neighboring country, Sudan is in trouble. There's an internally generated conflict going on. Some people say it's self-inflicted. Egypt is hosting a lot of refugees as a result of this. What is Egypt's position on the ongoing conflict in neighboring Sudan?
Well, we have been applying our relationships to our Sudanese brethren, our contacts with all of the participants, whether in the military or in the civilian component, primarily in the military, to instill the importance of reaching a ceasefire in dealing with the humanitarian consequences of this conflict, and in moving towards a broader dialogue that can chart a roadmap for a future and lead to elections and a stable and a unified government for Sudan that preserves the interests of its people, it preserves its territorial integrity, and provides the traditional role of Sudan to play an active role within the context of its African association to Eastern Africa, to the African Union. We continue to do so. President Sisi initiated the summit of the neighbors of Sudan. We have met as foreign ministers in N'Djamena to formulate a roadmap that has been endorsed, and we met here on the margins of the GA to operationalize that roadmap after the heads of state have endorsed it. I hope that those efforts, and they will address the security perspective, the humanitarian perspective, and the political perspective, each of the neighboring countries utilizing its deep relationships with various sectors of the Sudanese political entities, the military, the civilian component, to attract them to see the importance of ending this conflict, of providing the support to the Sudanese people, and expanding the dialogue. We have had several rounds in Cairo of dialogue by the civilian component related to how best to deal with the conflict, how to deal with its consequences, and how to move beyond it. And we hope to expand that dialogue even wider. But at this time, a lot of concentration is to reach a ceasefire. And we do so in cooperation with our American and Saudi friends, with the IGAD, with the African Union. We don't see that there is any exclusivity, but rather a complementarity between the various formats, the trilateral, the quadrilateral contact groups. So we're doing everything possible to contain the situation and avoid its deterioration.
At this ongoing UN General Assembly, the head of the Sudan National Army called on the international community to designate the RSF as a terrorist organization. If this is done, will this help the process to resolve the ongoing conflict and to bring peace? Like you said, Egypt is trying to rally around people to solve?
We are concentrating on ending the military confrontation and providing a format for political discussions between those concerned to reach an understanding that relieves the consequences and pressures on the Sudanese people. That is our main focus, in collaboration with the other formats that are involved in the issues related to Sudan. It's important also to maintain the structures of the institutions of governance, the legitimacy and the national state entities as the viable protector of the interests of the Sudanese people. I think we have seen the experience in our region of countries that have imploded and that have fragmented and do not have institutions of government that can represent the country and provide services to the people and to their citizens.
We all know the important role or the key role Egypt plays in the African Union and its formation. What is the stance of Egypt regarding the ongoing instability in some of these African countries, including recent coups, including extremism, before we go, in parts of Africa that you witness? What is the stance of the Cairo on that?
Well, if we address the issue of extremism and terrorist threat and terrorist organizations that have expanding their presence on the African continent, this is a direct consequence of the instability, of the fragility, and of the ongoing conflicts in many of the African countries that creates vacuums that are filled by these fundamentalist terrorist organizations and their association in various parts. They are all of the same ideological foundation, and they are cooperating with each other and thereby expanding their reach, finding safe havens when institutions of governance in the states are weak and are unable to address this challenge. To deal with this, we have to regain the stability, to end the conflicts on basis of understandings and avoid internal military confrontation and the pressures that terrorism and presents to many of our African sisterly nations. We do everything possible in support of capacity building, of finding African solutions to African problems, reconstruction in areas of conflict, so that we can create greater stability and security for our African brethren. This has to be a collective responsibility, and it has to be undertaken on the principles of the Charter of the United Nations and the Statute of the African Union.
Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you.